Hey Matrix Live. So I'm here today with Vlad and Kitsune. Kitsune, who is Alexey, and they are Vlad is a GSOC student. They've been working on Alexey's Quotient library. So hello, Vlad.
Hi everyone.
Hey. So what is it that you're actually working on the project, Vlad?
I work on PyQuotient, and it's a library with bindings for libQuotient, with Python bindings for libQuotient, and libQuotient is C++ library, this SDK for matrix clients.
Great, cool. So remind me. So libQuotient it powers Alexey's other client, right? What is that, Alexey?
Indeed. Yeah, indeed. Hello everyone. So it all started in the very early days of Matrix in 2016, when there was a client called PyQuotient, established by another guy who unfortunately left the Matrix universe since then, Felix. One of the first things that I did to the client was separating the backend code, which was actually a pretty easy thing because the guy before me really did a good job at separating the concerns. He basically put this code in a separate folder already. And I started maintaining it as a separate source tree with like clear responsibilities between the clients and the library, with the API and so on and so forth. And it grew into being a foundation for a couple of other clients, such as Tensor, then Umatrix, then Spectral, and then finally, recently, NeoChat. Of these, Quaternion and NeoChat are probably more successful. Others were kind of either in limbo or discontinued. But these two hang on. I develop on Quaternion. The cool KDE guys work on NeoChat to the great joy of the KDE community. And that's what libQuotient is about. Now, what I found is that with all its niceties, the C++ library is still pretty complex in getting a hold on, not even to develop on itself, but to develop clients on it. Basically,
right. Okay.
NeoChat is a fork of Spectral, which is a fork of Tensor, which is a fork of Quaternion.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it goes back to the same code base because few people could really manage using the library from scratch.
Gotcha.
And I thought, well, maybe Python bindings could be a good idea to lower the barrier of entry. Of course, I have to do my own difficult stuff on simplifying the API, but that's a separate story, maybe for another GSOC.
Yeah.
And now PyQuotient is really like an attempt to make writing clients on top of libQuotient easier.
Super. All right. So, Vlad, what are the goals of the PyQuotient project for you?
The goal of PyQuotient is to create bindings, full future bindings, and also at least a simple client as proof of concept, so to show that it's possible and it's work.
Great.
So
So where are you now? I know that you've just passed the first what do they call it? The first check mark.
The milestone.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Vlad really did.
Okay. So so what of the bindings are done so far?
In first milestone, I did bindings for core classes, for main classes in libQuotient, and also a first, so very simple client, so user can connect to server, login, logout. Yeah.
Oh, can they sync?
Initial data.
So they can get the initial sync data down already.
Yeah, so no data are shown, but the sync happens. We see it in logs.
Super. So that really is a strong first step, isn't it? Because it means that you can use the bindings you wrote to make your own client. Yeah, that's really excellent.
One thing I want to add here is that the approach that Vlad chose ultimately was a pretty ambitious one, because he basically just took Quotonian code and started rewriting it in Python.
Right, I see.
So instead of just taking the minimal stuff, maybe in the command line and so on, just full-blown graphical client.
Okay. I mean, were you pleased with that? Would you have expected a simpler approach?
Yeah, I did expect a simpler approach, but yeah, it's great.
It's all good. All right, Vlad, how did you decide to get involved in Matrix? Did you know about Matrix before the GSOC program?
I used Matrix earlier. So with my colleagues, with my friends, for internal communication in our small team.
Oh, awesome! So you're using Matrix in your work already?
It's not work. Yeah.
So you're studying now? Is that right? Where are you studying?
Yeah, University of Technology in Vienna.
Ah, okay. So you're living in Vienna now?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Cool. So what are the next steps for the project? We've achieved the first milestone. In order to pass the whole thing, what would be the entire goal?
And in second milestone, the goal is to extend bindings. So many classes don't have bindings yet, and also extend a client. So at least room list, hopefully also messages, something like that.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about this because, at the beginning, Alexey said, oh, well, people don't like to use C++. Maybe Python is more accessible. That's exactly where I'm at. I really want to see this project succeed because I'd like to be able to hack on this project because it's just so much more approachable to use Python than C++.
Yeah. Well, actually, the second milestone is kind of a bit harder. It's going to be more difficult because there is a lot of chore around treating all the events and displaying them on the screen. Like, this event should be shown this way, this event should be shown that way, and so on and so forth. And there's a long list of if-elses in the code. And no matter which language you pick, you end up basically with the same logic that you have to implement. We are probably eventually this code will end up being in the library as well, but for now it's not, and that basically means that you have to do the hard work.
Well, that's the bulk of the work for the client, I suppose, is timeline display and correctly displaying the timeline.
It really is.
Okay. But you can probably get some inspiration for this from what Quotonian and NeoChat and other applications. I know there's Mirage, which is a pure Python client already. So maybe they would be a good place to look.
Yeah, indeed. And one more source of to bolster the effort is the visualization part in Quotonian is implemented actually in yet another language called QML, which is Qt's own invention, the declarative language to describe user interfaces.
Okay.
And this can be reused from Python Qt bindings pretty transparently, although it's an interesting question on how much Python bindings to Qt are even ready for such an endeavor.
Right, I don't know.
We already stumbled over a few.
Okay, so I thought there was PyQuotient, which was, ready to go. Is that not the case? Okay, political question.
So no, the story here is that there was PyQuotient some time ago. Then there was another kind of competing project. Vlad, I don't remember. Is one fork of another PySide and PyQuotient? Do you know?
No.
I don't remember for now. But basically, there were two competing projects, kind of competing. Open source.
Yeah.
We have a healthy competition here, called PySide, and it ended up with PySide kind of winning that competition in that it's currently adopted by the Qt company themselves, and they maintain it as an official binding for Qt.
I see.
Except this binding is still not ready, and some corners are really difficult to approach in Python, and some corners simply don't work. And that's what, so one of the harder things for the Milestone 1 was to even prove the feasibility, to find out if there is everything in order in PySide to actually build that kind of thing. Turned out, yes, subject to a few quirks that Vlad has been valiantly overcome.
Are you going to contribute those back upstream, those fixes? Or is it just a case of working around the library?
I submitted issues to all problems, and hopefully they will also in mainstream.
Awesome. I mean, that's the best thing about open source is spreading the fixes around. That's great news. And I suppose the other comment is, now that you have these Python bindings, you're not married to Qt anymore. You could use any display system you wanted to. If you considered other ideas there.
It was something like I had such an idea that probably with Python we could be a bit more unbound from Qt, but in the end, the infrastructure that Qt provides is quite sufficient to disincentivize trying to move somewhere else. For example, the networking stack is already there, and if you're trying to jump over to the Python's own networking stack, you will have a problem with integrating with the libQuotient in the first place.
Right. Okay.
And it's a similar story with quite a few primitives around room composition, or actually exchanging events and so on. They are implemented in Qt's terms. In like the only real transition to Python types is the transition between QString, the Qt implementation of a string type, to Python string.
Right. Okay.
But then everything on top of that, it's pretty much bound to Qt, and there is no particular reason to move away from that.
No. Okay.
It's pretty good.
Okay. That's No. I mean, I'm not
it's
strict.
Just fine.
Okay.
One thing that we're missing currently is encryption, actually.
Right.
But there's a quite completely separate stream backed by NeoChat to finally get encryption into Quotient.
So the idea here would be that the NeoChat folk would upstream their E2E work into libQuotient, and then it would be inherited by PyQuotient, and then Quaternion, NeoChat, and the new client could all have E2E support.
Magically, yes.
That would be pretty great, wouldn't it? What would be required of PyQuotient to copy that work? It wouldn't be able to access it directly, or it could just use bindings.
Yeah, new bindings definitions, new version of PyQuotient, and that's all. I hope.
Cool. All right, thank you, chaps. So, is there anything else you want to add? And I suppose what's the goal after this project? Would you like to continue working on PyQuotient?
I think so.
You think so?
Maybe not so actively as in GSOC, but generally, yes.
Super.
If not, Ben, you will have to step in.
I know. Suddenly I'll have a new job. Working for Alexey.
Given that you are so much fascinated about Python.
Yeah, basically that.
Well, it's not very difficult to generate new bindings if you're not hitting the hard edges.
Right.
It's actually writing quite a bit of XML code, but other than that, things are relatively straightforward. So, as Vlad said, basically it's just adding another bunch of definitions in XML, and one good thing about end-to-end encryption is that it's mostly backend.
Okay.
The API exposed by the library is relatively limited. You don't need to handle all the own primitives and so on. That's something under the hood.
Well, exactly. I mean, the goal ideally would be that the client would hardly know, so it just shows the
Precisely.
Yeah, it would just show the decrypted text. Super.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you both for the time. Thank you, Matrix Live.
Thanks for inviting us.
Bye.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.